qualify as a salaried worker, you don't have an opportunity to earn overtime wages. In other words, you don't get paid extra for working over 40 hours in a week. But the rules are changing, and more people will qualify to make overtime pay. Janice, is this a good thing?
I think it's a good thing because I believe a lot of, because I have a family member in this situation where the employer puts the employee in the position of, oh, we're going to make you a salaried employee just for the sake of, they know the position requires 50 hours a week. They know the position requires 60 hours a week.
Right.
They're taking the cheapskate way out of saying, oh, well, we're going to pay you X dollars per year as a salaried employee. We'll even make you a manager or supervisor because we know by doing that, then we don't have to pay the 20 hours a week or, 10 hours a week overtime.
Yeah.
A time and a half. So
Yeah. I have family that has managed restaurants before, and I've seen the way it ends up happening. I've actually seen my family member put in sometimes 80 hours a week, especially if they're short-staffed. At some point, it actually becomes a tough decision for that person. So do I really want to fire this person that just screwed up? Because now I'm just going to have to cover their shift anyways.
And then if you look at the fact of, okay, so if I'm working 80 hours a week and here's my base salary of this is what I get
Right.
paid per week, then what does that work out to of what I'm actually making per hour?
Right.
And is that even something that you can
So
insist
something
on?
that I am a little bit concerned on this is that a lot of the restaurant managers and store managers, stuff like that, they're salary base plus commission. So part of me kind of wonders if they make them overtime eligible, if some of those commissions might end up disappearing.
So I think that the pay, based on what I have read, is based on the total. So salary plus
Okay.
commissions or whatever the case may be. In years past, there's been fact sheets and rules for individual sets of employees. If you are an executive, for example, you would qualify to be a salaried employee, but only if you met certain criteria.
Right.
One of which was your wage. If you were administrative, that's another category. If you were professional, if you were computer, if you were outside sales, all of those positions could be considered salaried positions if they met certain criteria. I don't think, from what I have read, it doesn't appear that the criteria is changing other than the salary. And the salary is changing because it's going from $23,000 a year minimum. So in other words,
Right.
anyone that made more than $23,660 a year could be considered a salaried employee. Now it's up to $47,500 a year. So it's almost doubled, but it hasn't changed in years. I mean, it's been a long time, and I'll be honest with you, and this is the problem I have with some businesses. They spoil it for all of us because there's probably some people that fall in the $30,000 a year range or 35 that probably could be considered a salaried position, and to some employees that's actually a good thing because that means that you make most of your own decisions, and maybe you work 43 hours a week instead of 40, but you don't work 50 or 60 hours a week as you were describing.
Right.
And the thing I've always been told is, well, if you get all your work done in 36 hours, you can go home for the day.
Yeah,
Like
when's
if
that going to happen?
It's Friday and you've got everything done and it's 2
good-
o'clock.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
good luck with that.
But that's always the pitch.
Sounds
that-
good in practice.
Exactly. It's always the pitch that you hear from the employer, from the manager is,
Well, I don't think, yeah,
Can go
and that
either
may
way.
be true. I think some employers just use it as a way to stop, to not
So
have
they
to
don't
pay
have to pay
their
overtime.
overtime. And hey, that's a great thing. I'd love to not have to pay overtime. But guess what? Fair is fair. And at some level, if you have a clerical level employee that you beef up their job description to make it look like they're more than they really are, I just don't think that's fair. And unfortunately, I think it's the minority of businesses that take advantage of that situation. And I think it's the majority of the businesses that are going to have to pay the consequences as a result of it, but I don't see any way around it. Carl, you are incredibly silent in this.
I
Don't
am.
you have an opinion?
I'm sitting here and my heart's just kind of thumping. I'm going, Is that Jim really talking? I mean, he's taking a good Bernie Sanders type approach to
Oh
this.
my God.
And
I am not feeling the Bernie.
wholeheartedly
Had to go
approve.
there.
I
Oh,
did have
boy.
to go there. I wholeheartedly approve on that. It's just amazing to hear the talk about government regulating wages.
Well,
I
so-
approve of it myself.
You know, something that I
I don't
am a
think
firm
it's
believer in.
regulating wages. I think
Right.
it's regulating work standards.
Right.
Exactly.
I think
That's what it
I
is.
think
Because
this
I
is
think
Don't
you need,
overwork
you
your
need to
people.
look at the fact that it says in the United States 22% of all children live in families with incomes below $23,550 a year for a family of 4. Research shows that on average, families need an income of about twice that level to cover basic expenses. Using the standard, 45% of children live in poverty.
But that's not usually a concern of the business community.
well, yes,
Well,
it
it
is.
should
No,
be.
But
it's
it's
not.
a
It
it's a
should be.
concern.
It should be, but it's not generally.
And this is
But
this
if
is
you
reported.
want
It's going to be
to-
4 million workers that are now going to qualify for overtime that previously didn't. So what are those employers going to do? Well, they have a choice. They can either
Hire another employee?
another full-time equivalent employee, which theoretically is good for the
They
economy.
can fire some others. They can jack their prices up.
They can jack their prices up, but it's a supply and demand world, so just jacking the prices
But
up may
how
not
is
be.
this different than just raising the minimum wage in general?
It is far different
Why?
than raising the minimum
Why?
wage.
It's still
Because
government telling employers how much they have to pay.
Because-
now, mind you, I'm in favor of that also, but it's still
I
government telling
was
employers.
quite sure
But
you
you're not
are.
telling them how much they have to pay them. You're saying that, okay, here's their wage.
Right.
Well, if they're making $35,000 a year, then you can't force them to work 50 hours a week without paying them overtime. If they're making $50,000 a year, then they can be salaried and they can work whatever hours. But it's saying if you're below what it and basically it's looking at household income, what do we need in order to survive? What's the cost of living on average in America?
Well, that's the same reason we raise minimum wage.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
It absolutely is not, and here's why. Because minimum wage is paid in most cases to people working at certain types of businesses, and when the supply of the labor force goes down, there is never an issue with minimum wage. You can get around that by keeping growth high in this United States. When you have a problem with minimum wage is when adults and people who are trying to support families have to depend on these minimum wage jobs to support their families. That's
is-
not what
which is
Because
those.
that
common
goes
now.
into
That's
that
not
goes,
what we're supposed
but
to do.
That goes into unemployment. It goes into underemployment because we may have lower unemployment rates right now, but the bigger issues are the fact that we have underemployment. We have people who have degrees, have experience, have been laid off because of the economy
right.
that tanked 8 years ago, whatever, and then the job they got is a minimum wage job,
Yep.
or it's working at a distribution center. It's a whatever where they're not using their degree, they're not using their experience. They used to have an executive level or management level job. They can't find anything in that space, so instead they're working at half their usual pay rate of what they used to make 10 years ago, and then they have to work 2 jobs in order to get the same paycheck to take care of their family.
All
You know,
work-
we've done this to
And the
ourselves because we've
justification
got
is the
free,
same.
we've got free trade agreements. We've got all this elimination of
outsourced
tariffs.
everything out of the
We've
country.
outsourced everything out of the country. We've lowered, the costs for businesses by getting rid of American jobs and sending them overseas.
And why do we?
I
How do we
won't
get rid of
disagree
American jobs? We unionize and we make the pay go up. So it's cheaper to make it in Mexico.
It's going
or
to be
it's
cheaper to make it in Mexico
China.
anyway. Doesn't make any difference.
It won't be if you put the right tariffs in place.
So
That's true enough. That has other
And
effects
it
on
goes
businesses.
back to quality.
you're not going to convince me that raising the minimum wage to that level is going to do anything positive for the economy. Conversely, I think this absolutely will, because I think this is a different issue.
And
in
I'm
my
going to let you
opinion.
have the last word on that, Jim.
Oh, can't we argue 5 more minutes?
But up next, it's Fast 5. We're not arguing the whole time. 4 panelists, 5 topics, and 6 minutes. Stay with us here on the Flipside.